And this episode is brought to you by Dye Real Estate and Land Company. They are the real estate agents based in Northwest Ohio that are the go-to company for people who enjoy the rural lifestyle and are looking to buy and sell some property. The whole team is amazing. I've used them in the past. I'm partial to Jaylene myself for obvious reasons, but they're all there for you whenever you need them. If you're in the market, just drop them a line at info@dyerealestate.com. That's info@dyerealestate.com. And don't forget to tell them Support Your Local Podcast sent you.
Hello, I'm Robert T. Smith, host of Support Your Local Podcast. I want to take a moment to remind you to hit that fast forward button. That is, unless you want to hear about something good being done. Anyone who knows me knows that I love bowling. In 2016, I founded the Smith Family Bowling Scholarship Foundation, intended to honor my father's hard work and dedication to community service and award scholarships to youth bowlers throughout the nation. To date, we've awarded well over $15,000 in scholarships. If you are a bowler, know a bowler, have ever seen a bowler, or heard about anyone who has ever seen a video of a bowler, I'd love for you to help promote the SFBSF and its mission. Please go to sfbsf.com and see what we're all about. While you're there, please consider hitting that donate button and helping us make a brighter future for our youth. Again, that's sfbsf.com. Thank you for your time.
I now declare the quick draw competition open.
Howdy, everyone. Pull up a chair, kick up your boots, and take a sip on a nice cold brew. It's The Quick and the Pod, the show of the Support Your Local Podcast Network, where we take a look at the 1995 Sam Raimi classic, The Quick and the Dead, one chapter at a time. As always, I'm your host, Robert Smith, coming to you from beautiful Tombstone. Yes, that one. Today we're going to take a look at Chapter 8, Cort versus Foy. But before we do that, let's take a look at one of our cast and crew, movers and shaker, if you will, and take a deep dive into one Mr. Lennie Lofton, who is our chapter titular character Foy, in a little segment I like to call Put My Name on the Board.
Put my damn name up!
All right, one Mr. Lennie Lofton playing our character of Foy in this movie. And first and foremost, just looking at this character, I have to say every time that I see him, he looks like he is a character. He looks like one of the trappers from Cannibal the Musical. And for those of you that know what that means, for you South Park fans out there, it's the Trey Parker, Matt Stone college film school project that they did that kind of put them a little bit on the map in regards to that. But if you ever get a chance to see Cannibal the Musical, I do highly recommend it. It is really stupid fun, but you get to hear the song that I think of when people say, let's build a snowman. It's definitely not the Frozen version. It's the one from this movie, and you'll see why. But when they get to the trappers, you'll see that one of these guys looks like he should be Foy. So every time I see him, that's kind of where my mind goes. But one Mr. Lennie Lofton, not as deep of a character actor as maybe some of our other ones that we've had in previous episodes, but has had his rightful share of hits. So obviously from 91, 95, he was in a couple bit parts here and there. In 95, obviously we have the Quick and the Dead, as we said, playing the Foy character in this movie. He was also in Seven. So what's in the box? I don't know. Watch and find out. 97, he was in LA Confidential. In 98, he was in a few more TV bit parts, but he was in things like Jag. He was things in X-Files, things like Walker, Texas Ranger. One thing that I found amusing in looking him up is in 98, he was in one episode of Silk Stockings. And for those that don't know what Silk Stockings was, it was a show on the USA Network. usually came on, I believe, if my memory serves, Monday nights at like 10 or 11 o'clock after Monday Night Raw went off the air, which is where I discovered it. But it would have been on other times as well. But essentially, it was a detective series with these two characters, Rob Estes, I believe, something Estes, I remember was the name, and then a female counterpart. But it was essentially a erotic thriller detective series. So they would go and investigate murders and always had an erotic twist. So this was very, 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 very much kind of a gateway drug to getting young, impressionable minds ready for what we affectionately used to call Skinamax. So the Showtime and Cinemax shows that used to come on after 10 o'clock, that was just literally just softcore porn. But this was kind of the show that this is what they could get away with on cable TV, but was very much a gateway drug in regards to that. I remember several of those episodes very vividly. But apparently he was on one of the episodes of that. I just found it very interesting because you just don't see silk stockings jumping out at you from a lot of people's IMDb pages. In 2002, he was in Sum of All Fears. 2003, he was in Daredevil, which critically maligned Ben Affleck as Daredevil. I still to this day really enjoy that movie. I think it's one of the better ones. Colin Farrell definitely chews up the scenery, but we didn't have Marvel movies really at that point, so we didn't know what we were doing. I really enjoy, I'm not taking any credit away from the Daredevil series that recently came out in the past couple years, also showed up in the She-Hulk series on Disney+. But for me, Ben Affleck's kind of my Daredevil. I enjoyed that movie, really enjoyed the soundtrack. It's what introduced most of the world to Evanescence and the Bring Me to Life and My Immortal. So for as much as that got played on the radio and got played out, maybe you hate those songs now, I've come to rediscover them and re-love them. But anyways, he was in that. 2005, he was in The Shield, the TV series on FX, with Michael Chiklis as the bad vice cop and his gang that are trying to run dirty, but at the same time still be cops. I love that show. My brother-in-law got me started on that one. I at one point owned the entire series on DVD. Check out at least the first 4 seasons. It was definitely worth a watch. In 2007, he was in 3:10 to Yuma, which is yet another Western with our character, or not with our character, but with our actor, Russell Crowe. If you've not seen that, I believe also Christian Bale is also in that one, if I remember right, if I remember 3:10 to Yuma. But definitely check that one out. Also 2007, he was in Reno 911 Miami, because those of us that loved Reno 911, the show, thought, what if they had a movie and they were in Miami? And there were some good parts in it. It wasn't as good as the show was, but it stands up there. It's up there with Super Troopers, definitely. And then pretty much goes through a lot more TV bit parts until 2022, when he was more of a recurring character in the Better Call Saul series, which is the kind of the subsequent series from Breaking Bad. But again, not as in depth of a acting career as some of our Sharon Stones, Russell Crowe's, but definitely worth some merit in these. And he does play the Foy character very well. He is that skeezy scumbag kind of guy. And then when you see him in other things and see his IMDb profile, you see him cleaned up. You go, oh, if that's how he looks in real life, then he did a pretty good job of portraying Foy. But this has been Put My Damn Name on the Board.
Add my name to the list.
Attaboy!
We start our chapter, which is Chapter 8, Cort versus Foy, with our insanely creepy photographer. He's standing there getting ready to take a picture, and as he stands there, he just looks weird. Again, I think I've mentioned before, he looks something straight out of a Smashing Pumpkins video, specifically the Tonight video, with this just giant, oversized, cream-colored top hat, and then cream and white oversized clothes. He looks like a mixture of two people that I used to work with at Walmart. So shout out to Randy and shout out to Dwayne for any reason, if anybody knows who I'm talking about, or if you are the ones listening. Sorry. We pan down the street and it's showing the crowd is very rowdy. They're booing, and there's a small child creeping under a horse to pick up, well, the stuff that Jake used to shovel over at Madame Orr's house. So if you were a listener to season 1 of Support Your Local Sheriff, you know what I mean. I just am confused. I mean, granted that he's a kid, so he's not probably thinking about these things, but I don't understand the want to pick something up like that with your own hands just to throw it at somebody. It's kind of like Lorraine Bracco's character in Goodfellas. She talks about she doesn't understand why they would spit on their own floor. It just doesn't seem to serve a really good purpose. I don't get it personally, but we see the crowd and they're obviously not liking whoever it is that the camera POV is pretending to be as they're walking down the street. They are just a bit hostile. And for some of them with their acting, I'm really reminded, I guess this is like my third reminder so far, but I'm reminded of the rabble crowd in Q's Cort and the Encounter at Farpoint episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. Yes, I'm a nerd. Yes, I'm a geek. Come at me, bro. But there's the scene where they're brought before Q, and there's the crowd that are just jeering and booing and rah, 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 and waving their fists at them and all that. And it's very, very reminiscent, which time frame wise, obviously it would be right around the same time frame. So who knows, maybe even some of the same characters. But this crowd is a little smaller. They're throwing food, or at least we hope that's food. Seeing the little boy earlier, that might be something else. But we turn and we see that it is in fact Cort that is being assaulted with various vegetables. I wonder if people actually did this. It's kind of a trope. Whoop, 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 to call back. It's kind of a trope of people throwing rotten tomatoes and lettuce. It's always lettuce. I'm not sure why it's always lettuce. But people throwing vegetables at people as they're booing. I wonder if that actually ever happened, or if it's just such a movie trope that's where it's coming from. Ratsy is on one side behind Cort, and Herod is on the other. They're strolling along behind him, and I found that very, very interesting, because he being Herod, he's relatively close behind him, maybe just a few feet, and it's well within range from being hit with an errant tomato, or worst case scenario, whatever it is that boy was picking up off the ground. Why this crowd would risk hitting him being Herod again, is beyond me. I can't quite connect those dots. But we get the point. The Lord is not very welcome in this town, as we will continue to see. Russell Crowe stops in the middle of the street, and we pan back to see Foy. He's guzzling a bottle of something, and he's ready for the gunfight. From the looks of it, I'm assuming that it's some type of whiskey. He throws the bottle away, and someone named Jimmy yells that he has money riding on Foy, which apparently in Foy's eyes is money in the bank. Cort has already stated that he's not going to fight. He's pretty adamant that he's not going to fight. He's above all this. He's a man of God now. We'll see how long that lasts. But to him, betting on Foy is a sure bet, because he's, in theory, going to win by default. I assume that I would be a bit confident too if the person I'm facing had already said that they weren't going to fight. So I can't necessarily blame him for his confidence. We get the 1 minute countdown from the clock as a man's pouring his beer in slow motion. And every time I see this, I wonder if this is a stylistic thing, that's meant to be the character of Cort being so fast that he sees things in slow motion. Kind of like what we see in The Flash. You know, he's just so fast that everything moves in slow motion for him. So I don't know if it's meant to be his point of view of the man pouring the beer. But I wonder, the reason it's not so clear is it's intermixed with real-time movements from Foy. And in the moment that the man gets bumped and he drops his beer glass in slow motion, Russell Crowe has his eyes closed and is praying. So if it is meant to be from his point of view, he's not seeing this beer glass get dropped. So I wonder again if it's supposed to be that, or if this is just Sam Raimi being a little stylistic. And we know that he tried to do each of the gunfights a little differently. So maybe this is just his chapter of this gunfight is, okay, this one is going to be done somewhat in slow motion. I don't know. The glass that was holding the beer hits the ground and it shatters just at the second that the clock strikes the hour. And once again, I want to point out that it was not chiming the hour, it merely struck the hour. And we see Foy draw and hear a shot as his eyes grow wide. And we see a close-up of Russell Crowe's face, and we slowly pan down to show that his gun was drawn at his hip. He doesn't have a very loose and open draw. He pretty much just right at the hip, which is the proper technique if you want to be fast. And there is smoke rolling out of his barrel. So apparently, at the last second, he had a crisis of faith and would rather continue on with this mortal coil and stay living. So Russell Crowe did shoot. And unfortunately for Foy, shot Foy. Foy does grab the right side of his chest, and he hits his knees yelling that, he shot me, repeatedly, obviously in shock because he wasn't expecting a real fight to come of this. Sharon Stone has a small smile of relief. You can tell that there is something going on character-wise between the two of them. They're starting to understand each other a little bit, and obviously could be a little bit fond. She wants him to stick around for a little bit. But Herod walks by Russell Crowe, who is still just standing still. I don't know if it's meant to portray shock that he drew. You know, was it kind of an idle hands thing to where he didn't really realize that he was drawing? His hand did it by reflex, or perhaps it's possessed. I don't know. But Herod asked the preacher if it felt good, nice and smooth, because apparently old habits do die hard. So just again, a nice little chink in the armor in regards to Russell Crowe's character, and Herod trying to kind of chisel away at that to prove the hypocrisy of, a leopard never changes its spots in regards to the Cort character. And that's the end of our chapter. So what will come of the preacher breaking his vow? Will Foy live? Will Foy ever stop screaming, he shot me? Find out when we come back for chapter 9. But until we meet again, folks, I love you. Take care. Thank you for your time. And as always, support your local podcast.